Technology is obviously a significant part of our business.
But the challenges in business today is just become so embedded. It's critical to everything that we do. And I think that trend is only going to get worse. New technologies emerging with AI and so forth. Unconsciously, we do things with technology that we become very dependent on. If we don't have it, it makes our lives very difficult.
So what's the purpose? What are we actually trying to solve for? Because I know in business, it's very easy to get caught up in the tactical of just doing, rather than lifting your eyes up a little bit and say, what are we actually wanting this technology to solve for? Otherwise you end up with a great big embedded technology stack that you're not quite sure why you should be using it. And I think that's where having good people in your corner to be able to straighten you up and sort of refine what you're doing is super important.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners at Burke Britton Financial Partners.
Well, this is the Finances podcast. It is, what's the date today? But I'm not going to use the date, sorry, Job. We're talking to my producer off camera. Today, my guest is Stephen Gray. Stephen Gray, director at Utilitise IT, and also, am I right in saying director at Land on Heart?
Yep, that's right.
Thanks for coming in, Steve.
No worries. Thank
now,
you.
with full disclosure for the listeners, Steve, you do look after the tech here at Burke Britton, but I wanted to have this conversation for a while, and I'm sure it will go in a couple of different directions, but I wanted to first start with the technology side of things. Technology is obviously a significant part of our business, but I remember a time when, I think when Peter first started the business, he walked in, he had a PC, he had an email address, and that allowed you to function with work. Mm-hmm. What's happened over the course of the last 25, 30 years? I mean, we're so embedded, and I suppose sometimes you feel a little trapped to technology. I know that's a broad question, but we'll start there.
Yeah, I think, and that's probably one of the key challenges in business today is that it's just become so embedded, and it's critical to everything that we do, and I think that trend is only going to get worse. We've now new technologies emerging with AI and so forth. It just means that unconsciously we do things with technology that we become very dependent on. And if we don't have it, it makes our lives very difficult. So,
and I think one of the tendencies for maybe tech service providers like yourself, or one of the challenges I'd imagine, is how you position yourself as adding value, not just another expense that a business needs to accommodate. And I think, again, talking to you previously, I think that's one of the big challenges. Also one of the reasons why, as a business, we decided to come and work closely with you, is I think with the right technology support, it's sort of a force multiplier in business.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the problem for most organisations, particularly in small to medium business, is that your core business is not technology, and you just want it to work. And I think one of our key roles is really to just make sure that that your technology is functioning. That you're able to exploit it to the best of your abilities, and that largely you're not there stuck with IT problems that are actually impacting on your ability to run your business. So,
how do we explain the anomaly of something that's presented to create efficiency all of a sudden becoming a crutch in people's life? I think the phone's probably a great example. Even emails. Emails are probably a better example of something that was presented as this is going to be a super efficient way of streamlining communications. Yet you can see that at the polar end of that, it creates a sort of a time suck. I think the same can be applied to most things with technology, and AI is probably the one I want to get to, but AI also, I think, has that potential to be just like a time-consuming suck of people's resources if they don't really have a targeted approach to how they deal with it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And I think it also leads to a number of social issues that we have to deal with as well. And you talk about the phone as being a time saver and improving efficiency. I remember when the first smartphones came into Australia, and I was doing a trial with Blackberries, and I had global responsibilities at that stage. And what I first saw as being beneficial, and the fact that that if the US team was sending emails through at 2 o'clock in the morning, that I would just be awake and responding to them, quickly becomes something that's that every time you hear the phone beep with a new message coming through, that you just respond to, and it just becomes embedded, and it starts to consume your time. And I think that continues with all the technologies that we deal with today. Social media is another example of it, and I think our challenges are no different to the old leadership challenges of trying to put the principles of time management in place. But it does require discipline, and I think that's something that's we constantly have to work with. We see it in our business all the time. That you can lose efficiency because the first things that pops up is what you'll start to prioritise, rather than going back to those fundamentals of saying, no, this is what I need to be working on first. So.
Touched a little bit on your history. Obviously, Utilitise hasn't existed forever. Tell me a little bit about the history of Utilitise and what you see as the purpose, the vision for Utilitise, and what it delivers to your clients.
Yeah. So I started Utilitise in 2016, and that was after about 25, 30 years in the corporate world. 25 years, I'd say. And so my previous role, I was a director of IT at KPMG Australia, and I'd been through a number of business transformations and improving IT services across corporates that I'd worked in. And so when I first started Utilitise, it was utilising those skills and the experiences and thinking there was an opportunity to go out and help smaller organisations to be able to try and raise the bar in terms of how they were using technology and improving the way that IT was delivering service for their users. So we started off with that vision. It was also at the time that Windows 10 came in, and it was also when Microsoft 365 was first becoming a major part of how organisations were operating. And in my history, I was actually the first Office 365 customer in Australia, and so it just became a natural progression for us to really leverage the Microsoft stack and what we knew about what was happening with device management to use that as a platform to be able to help organisations. And with Utilitise, our goal today is still the same, that we want to focus on bringing enterprise experience to small to medium business, particularly for customers that we support that don't necessarily have their own IT capabilities, to be able to get the best out of their technology.
So what's been the biggest change? It's nearly 10 years. So from 2016 to nearly 2026, what are the biggest changes you've seen in small to medium businesses from the way they manage technology and the services that you've had to continue to provide to meet their needs?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that has come through is the rising challenge of cybersecurity, and it's central to everything that occurs with technology and the risk associated with it. And so our focus is very much looking at it from a director's view down, and so someone who's running a business, a small to medium business, they've got director's obligations, and those bars continue to rise. The challenges with data breaches that we've seen in Australia has meant that changing regulations are putting more pressure on companies to be able to comply and to meet those standards. And so we have certainly, as we've evolved, responded to that and made sure we put more focus into to delivering that service as effectively as possible, and to create a level of comfort and assurance for our customers that they are safe, and also providing that advice to them so that they know how to respond to those regulatory requirements.
So practically, what does that look like? So you walk into a business that hasn't got their cybersecurity protocols in place. What does that look like compared to a business where you have it dialed in?
Yeah, it means a substantial change in the way that they'll operate, and we have a standard set of metrics that we monitor. So these are metrics that are made available to you within the Microsoft 365 stack. And what we tend to see with most customers that we walk into is that they'll be about the global average in terms of what the cybersecurity metrics should be. And our goal is to certainly raise them. And in most cases, what will happen is that within the first couple of months of us being there, we'll double that metric overnight within that period.
Okay, and are small businesses still managing without technology support like yours? Are they still trying to wing it?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, quite a few. And you know, we go in and we do provide support to those organisations. So a number of the customers that we've picked up have not had IT support, and it could be that they've grown organically, or it could be that their business is got to a point where they've had internal capability, but they've also then identified that with the changes in technology or where they want to go, that they can't provide the investment that's required to skill up their resources or whatever it may be. Or it could be that they lose the resource, and that tends to be when those organisations will pivot.
Yeah, and what sort of size businesses do you predominantly work with? What's your I suppose target market where you can support best?
Yeah, so our focus is generally 50 seats or above, or 50 users, technology users or above, and we do have customers that are in the 500 seat range as well. Part of our business also works with some of the largest tech providers in the world, so we actually do large implementations globally. But we don't then provide the ongoing support. It's just part of that work for how they're modernising those organisations. So we still have our foot in the door in terms of the requirements around enterprise, but then certainly the focus for us is any customer that's got 50 seats or above.
Okay. Well, thanks for looking after us with only 20 seats. I appreciate that.
No, that's okay. And we do have smaller customers as well, but in terms of the right size, for us to get the best efficiency, we tend to see that that's where it's centred.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing when you talk about sort of growing capacity in a business, and I'm sure a lot of I see it and I hear it with a lot of businesses of our size, is that they will inevitably have a growth period, and those growth periods comes with a few growing pains. Some of those growing pains are someone that's been in the business for a number of years, has worn multiple hats, and they need to sort of pass that role out and decide, is this something we need to outsource or actually have as capacity in the business? And I think what I've enjoyed in the relationship with you, and I know our dealings are more directly through Amy and our practice management, but the ability to know that you've got a trusted source of expertise that you can rely on. And we as a business, like I suppose many, we are looking to see where we can create efficiencies. And I know we've lent on you and your team a number of times on just the ability to ask questions about technology, about the connection between Dynamics, Microsoft 365. They're all really important to us, and thank you again for the support that you've given us over the course of the last probably 12 or 18 months, thereabouts.
Yeah.
I wanted to, I know it's very topical, and we've asked you and your team a number of times about it, but what are you seeing now in terms of the progression with AI? What are you doing in your own business, and what are you seeing businesses that you support do in terms of AI? How are they making the most effective use of it, and what are the tips and traps, pros and cons of using AI in the business?
Yeah. And yes, we're increasingly seeing organisations like yourself that are starting to explore AI, and that generally is Microsoft Copilot is what we are seeing in businesses. We're also with some of our organisations, because we work with community health and in the healthcare sector, they're also using AI agents that are supporting their practice management tools. And
can I just pause you there? For those uninitiated, and you can help me here, I've got some sense of what an AI agent is. What's the best way to explain what an AI agent is?
Yeah, so we in general will think of ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot as as a tool that we can interact with, which is generative AI, and then we may use things like note taking and so forth. That's just transcribing, conversations. And an agent in this context is very similar. So it's using generative AI, but it's embedded into the applications that they're working with. So it's got a single purpose, which is, and in the practice management space, it could be for a clinician or for a GP who's seeing a patient, and what will happen, and we're seeing some really positive outcomes from this already, is that they might be taking notes throughout their the day, and then they'll spend 3 and 4 hours of a night just capturing all of their notes, putting it back into the practice management system, so they've got their records up to date. And with these agents, what it's allowing them to do is to effectively, it's listening into the conversations, it's allowing the conversation to be transcribed, and then their process of an evening now has been reduced down to 15 to 30 minutes. To just effectively review the notes and validate that what the discussion centred around has been captured correctly, so that the clinical notes are being maintained.
Is that so? Copilot, for example, gives an AI summary. Is that there's a off-the-shelf agent that's doing that summary for you? And the point being is that with some personalisation of those agents, you can have it very role or industry specific. Yeah,
definitely. And so those particular products that I'm referring to, and there's more than one, they're specifically targeted, and so they're their own products. So it's not Copilot and it's not ChatGPT, so they're designed specifically for their practice management systems, and they'll also embed with other tools, so that you're getting the data collection that's required and so forth as well. But the use of Copilot and ChatGPT as well then means that you do have the ability to start building those tailored agents. They then can be very specific for those organisational role requirements you've got as well. So that's where the evolution is going. The way that the technology providers develop these things, it's very similar to what used to happen with the first incarnations of Microsoft Office, is that it gets put into the hands of end users, and as a finance guy, you'd know this. The accountants, they love their Excel.
Yes.
And over time, what happens is that they just evolve the spreadsheets. They become embedded as part of the way the business operates, and then they become mission critical. And so with these AI tools and bots that can be developed, the same type of principles will apply. So they're not specifically designed for IT resources to be the ones that are building the solutions. With a little bit of skill, anyone effectively can start to get their hands on it and develop them. So I think that'll become a support challenge in the next few years as more organisations start to take hold of the technology.
Yeah, I think that's that idea of, like you mentioned, mission critical, but sort of mission creep, where you've got to continue to bring yourself back to what is the purpose? What are we actually trying to solve for? Because I know in business it's very easy to get caught up in the tactical of just doing, rather than lifting your eyes up a little bit and say, what are we actually wanting this technology to solve for? Otherwise, you end up with a great big embedded technology stack that you're not quite sure why you should be using it. And I think that's where having good people in your corner to be able to straighten you up and sort of refine what you're doing is super important. Yeah. I sidetracked you a little bit in terms of the sort of the pros and cons. What are you seeing people do wrong with the embedding of new technology, particularly AI, in their businesses at the moment?
Yeah. Your last point that you made, I think, becomes an important part of it, and that is that technology can evolve, and what can happen if you're just starting building something and then you keep building on top of it. Before long, you've got this sprawl, and then the cost of management, because you've overcomplicated, becomes an issue. And so some of those principles that we have in IT around enterprise architecture become really important. So making sure that what you're doing with your technology is aligned to your business strategy, and so all of the good governance things that organisations should be focused on, and as business leaders, we get pushed down our throat that make sure you've got your business strategy and then you've got your action plans that are going to align to it. your technology roadmap should follow the same thing. So so that way you don't get that sprawl, because in sprawl invariably means a number of things. You don't necessarily know and maintain the corporate memory as to why you did something. And so then you got things that are sitting off to the side that can't be supported, or that technology no longer is supported, but has become mission critical. So you got no pathway to keep it updated. The cost of operations increases because you've got multiple components. It's maybe on different technology stacks, and so then you're paying a cost for the fact that you've got technology that's embedded in different stacks, and then the ongoing cost to support. And then as the organisation changes and people change, being able to maintain and keep those technology changes up to date can become increasingly a problem. So I think they're the challenges that you've got to have a clear view on as you're progressing forward.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, it's probably a clear pathway to encouraging people that they should have support, particularly as they grow through those difficult periods in their business, to outsource where you possibly. I'm a big believer in actually outsourcing for expertise.
Yep.
Particularly if you don't have the capacity to have that in-house. Sometimes I would suggest nearly in every instance you've got to seek external counsel, and it's been certainly valuable for our business. And all the things you talked about, the ability to actually sort of critically analyse the systems you've got and refine them based upon what the business is actually wanting to achieve, I think are really important. Yeah. Can I ask a question from a innovation point of view? Obviously, technology is moving very quickly. Is there anything that you've seen of recent time that has kind of blown your mind in terms of innovation that a business or businesses are doing that you think you'd start to see implemented more broadly? And I know AI has probably been that, but is there anything that you're seeing coming down the pipe that a business like ours should be thinking about?
Yeah. I think at the moment the key one is definitely AI related, and AI is such a broad term, topic, because everything we've talked about today has all been about generative AI, and how you can use ChatGPT or Copilot, and we do see productivity improvements that are occurring there, but the key thing that happens in a lot of organisations and what drives their business is data, and that's been the case for a long time now, and I don't think that we've really seen the innovation just yet, and particularly in small to medium businesses, because you don't have the ability to invest as much as you need to, and I think that's the next generation, and where the innovation will start to come in is how we can use other elements of AI like machine learning. And data analytics, and those technologies have been around for some time, but they are continuing to evolve. So with those areas, that's probably a hidden gem that is still that we still need to exploit. We're seeing some examples of that, and we're doing work in our own space to try and look at how we can use machine learning. So we've got some technology projects that we're working on ourselves that will help optimise the way that we run our service desk, and improving cost efficiency there as well. So and that comes from, you need to continue to invest to make sure that you are staying ahead of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about data, and data can, in a lot of respects, it can be a bit of a dirty word too, because I think there's that sense of us all being a product, the product that the larger businesses or technology companies are using us to sort of harvest data. And there's truth to that. There's absolutely truth to that. I think as a small business, that idea of data is so, well, it will be mission critical. And I think, as you said, it's kind of an untapped element of how, not that you can exploit, but how you can, exploit for advantage for the client. So for the end user, for our clients, how do we actually use the data that we've gathered for them to actually deliver a much better experience? We've begun the journey of sort of, as you would know, sort of existing in and around the Microsoft ecosystem. And I don't think we've made, we definitely haven't made full use of the things like Power BI, the ability to sort of extract that data for good purpose. But I think anyone out there that's listening, that point of data analytics, I spent a little bit of time in the US over the early part of this year, and I think if there were, data was in the top 2 of every conversation around business. Obviously, business strategy was there, leadership was there, but data and the use of data and technology was a strong theme. I think those businesses in the near future that make use of data very well, I think will be the market leaders. Those that don't, I think will probably find themselves struggling in a new world.
Yeah, and look at the IT megatrends. It's exactly the same. The top 3 at the moment tend to be AI, cybersecurity, and data and analytics are the key priorities that organisations are looking at. And I think the key when it comes to data is you've got to look at it from a business leadership perspective, and the critical part of this is you've got to think about this in an inquiring mind model, where you're looking at asking questions of your data, and rather than just thinking it as just being a dump of data and you're just trying to analyse it and pivot it and so forth. I think you'll start to change the way that you think about what data can do for you when you're thinking of what those questions are, and I know in your business, Jay, that's certainly the case. That you're looking at, based on interactions we've had with this particular client, what would be the best services or the best outcomes that are going to improve them or improve their position, and so that's asking different questions of the data rather than just saying, all right, well, from our data points, we can see that that you've been in here X number of times over the last 5 years. Yes. And so it's looking at how you can help release value by asking the right questions for the data.
Yeah, I think that the idea of an inquiring mind is a really good one. Overlaid, we think about our team a lot in personality types, and I think we've probably talked about this before. We actually capture our sense of what our clients' personality preferences are, and they're really powerful things to understand. And also, we have different personality types. We're very data-focused people in the business. We've got very curious minds. The ability to overlap both of those and not just be able to extract data for the sake of seeing how many times a client has been in, but understand, like you said, what their preferences are, the way they'd like to be presented their information, what their values are. I mean, it's the very, very interesting things that technology, the capture of data, will enable us to do in business over time. So I'm excited. I don't know whether we've. I think you've mentioned the cybersecurity. I think it's worth noting that all of these things come with risks and inherent knowledge. You've reminded us on multiple times, and your team has, on the importance. I know you've poked at us and tested us and checked to see whether or not there's sort of open doors to get in. But maybe it's worth just revisiting that again, because I think we get excited about technology, we get excited about data, we get excited about AI. But in doing that, you end up being the custodian of an enormous amount of valuable and private information for our clients. So maybe just it's worth reinforcing for our clients that are listening, the importance of and how serious the cyber security aspect. I know you've touched on it, but I think it's worth just repeating again how important it is, and the things that we put in place or you put in place for us as a business and our clients. Yeah, and it's interesting, with the conversation we just had with data, I was actually going to reinforce that in the next point that I made, and we've had another really good reminder this week with the hacking incident or the data breach that's occurred with Qantas. Yep.
And immediately the media response from experts tends to be, well, why is this information being collected? And so if I go back to the point around data, one of the things that we do internally is we start asking the question of our teams. So it's okay for us to collect this data, and it's good that we can do it, but what are we going to do with it, and why? And so, for example, we might use logging data to be able to see what's happening with devices and present that logging data centrally. But if we're not going to respond as a result of it, and it's just going to be something there that we're collecting data for, what's the point of having it? Because it's just wasting space, but it's also creating an attack surface or increasing the risk from a cyber perspective. And I think when you, particularly small to medium business, you were talking about before, what those strategies are and the power of data, but it also can become your biggest risk. And so if you haven't got the right disciplines in place about how you're storing the data, and clear on what data that is and why you need it, then you could have regulatory issues that you're dealing with because you may be storing information that isn't relevant for the primary purpose. So you then at risk of compromising the Australian privacy principle laws. But you've also got the other aspect of if you do get exposed and you have a malicious event that occurs, so an external attacker that tries to access your systems, then that data is also then at risk. And so then you're thinking about, well, that's your customers, and then if you're starting exposing your customers, then the risk that you've got is reputational, and that means your business. And so it's really important that that at the foundation that those disciplines are in place, and that you're either thinking about it or you've got your technology provider or as your trusted advisor that's got those disciplines in place and keeping you safe, and keeping you aware of those types of issues. And I think you should always be keeping it up to date. And that's certainly from a business owner, director's perspective. It's one of the things that your director's obligations is to make sure you've got appropriate cybersecurity policies in place and processes in place. And if you don't have that tech focus in your business and you haven't got someone else that you can rely on, then ultimately it comes down to you, and you've got to have those disciplines. And in a lot of cases, we're grappling with what technology is available to us without understanding the consequences of what could happen if some of that data was to be leaked or how it could be leaked. And I think the other side of it is, and part of what we try to do with educating our customers is utilising it in such a way that it's practical. And what we do in business in terms of data security and information security is really no different to what you do in your personal life. And too often we take risks in our personal life that expose ourselves.
We used to leave the front door open, Steve, when you came home,
right?
So the kids could get in.
Yeah, and ultimately, metaphorically, that's what we do with technology today. Yeah. And there were good days when you could do that. It's sad that we've got to a state in society that's what we now need to do. That we have to lock everything up, and we can't let our kids go off and play they once used to. But in business, in terms of security, we have exactly the same risks. Once upon a time, you could afford to, not worry too much about how controlled you were in access into your systems, because you weren't going to have malicious actors that were really going to expose you. But today, there's organisations that's their core purpose is to just expose and leak data and then profit off the fact that you've had those gaps.
I always am reminded when I'm forced to do some sort of multi-factor authentication, or when I was overseas, my computer wouldn't work on occasion if I was on the hotel Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
For me now, it's a brilliant reminder that I'm being protected, that inconvenience, that small inconvenience of having to put a few digits in or to scan a QR code or do some sort of other authentication is really important. And from a client point of view, I've spoken about this on the podcast previously, is just how important it is for clients whatever, particularly in financial services industry, when we're dealing with money and assets, that they protect themselves. So all the things we're talking about from a business point of view that apply to 500 seat businesses, to a varying degree, or maybe to a lesser degree, a less complex degree, apply to the individual, and make sure that they secure their own bank accounts, make sure they've got multi-factor authentication. We're obsessed with that with our clients, make sure that they protect their own interests.
Yes. And I know multi-factor authentication frustrates me. I know every day when I open Xero up and I get the multi-factor challenge, just to go in and to do the fundamentals around your financials. It's frustrating because you feel like it's in the way, but you also know it's for a very good purpose. It should be encouraged. And the Australian Cybersecurity Centre puts guidance out for the Essential 8, which is 8 core practices that every organisation should put in place. Multi-factor authentication is central to that. It's just one of those basic foundations and the reason you do it is that having a secondary form of how you have to get into a system, and generally it's going to be your phone or it's going to be a text message or something like that, means that if someone else gets access to their first credential to be able to get into the system, they can't get past that because that's always going to be with you. And so as a foundation, it just makes it, creates a level of assurance. Doesn't guarantee that you won't get, broken into, but it just reduces the risk.
Yeah, brilliant. Now on technology, Steve, we mentioned at the beginning that you're also the director of Land on Heart. Now I know it was the first time you and I met, I thought it was an interesting parallel to what you're doing at the moment, the work that you're doing in sort of remote communities, creating technology or kiosks. Can you talk to me a bit about what Land on Heart is and how you've integrated your sort of expertise in technology into helping Indigenous communities?
So Land on Heart, I started 3 years ago, and it's an organisation for purpose. And so from a personal perspective, I have Indigenous heritage, and over my time in the corporate world and spending more time in reconciliation and understanding how we can bring First Nations people together and be more integrated into the corporate world and so forth. It started to burn or build a passion for me around what I could do to help. And, so from my early upbringing and how I've progressed in my career, and it's not necessarily because of my heritage, but I feel like I've done pretty well in terms of how I've evolved my career, and a lot of that was driven by how I grew up, and then I came from working or living out in Corio and in the northern suburbs, and just evolved and have been relatively successful in the corporate world, and so I, particularly when I was at KPMG, it really started to make me think about what we have a responsibility and a role to do, to help with corporate social responsibility. And so then with Land on Heart, it was really then starting to think about how I could create technology pathways and opportunities for First Nations people. And that's a big task, because it's not like out in communities, and we're not talking necessarily about our First Nations people that are in suburbia. Creating that talent and also means starting to think about what we can do out in communities, and bringing technology back to those communities, as opposed to just having people leave country and then going into to having to work in foreign locations and trying to acclimatise to something that's completely foreign to them. And the government certainly has a lot of focuses within the closing the gap targets on reducing the digital divide and things like that as well. So the business was effectively started with that purpose, and it continues with that today. And we do want to, and we've got trainee programs that we're developing so that we can, as I said, identify tech talent and create and foster roles, which means we give pathways for roles that can work with us in Utilitise as the other business, or into the corporate world. But the other thing that we're focused on within the grassroots is bringing technology out into those communities. And so the Land on Heart kiosks that we've developed.
I think you showed me a prototype when I was in the office.
And we're really proud of it. It's so this technology is built from the ground up. We've worked with local suppliers here in Geelong to develop the platforms, and so we've looked at other kiosks that were being deployed out into remote Australia, and saw some of the challenges and some of the support issues that were occurring with those pieces of equipment. So, for example, a kiosk stands about 1.2 metres tall, and when we were seeing how they were being deployed, they just go out in the back of a pallet, and it's as one piece. By the time it gets to community, and we're talking about bush tracks and things like that, it's never going to be there in one piece. So, and because of the technology inside, it also means with vibration and things like that, you're going to have other issues in transit. So, so we worked with a local metal fabricator here in Geelong, and we came up with a concept of how we could effectively create a kit for the kiosk. So it was almost like an IKEA kit, which just means minimal time to get it installed on site, and made sure it was industrial strength and hardened, which is exactly the prototype you've seen. And then we also re-engineered the internal technologies. And what these kiosks are then designed to do is effectively provide content about a whole raft of topics that are relevant for community, which includes videos that are done in language for specific communities that's going to help create digital connectivity. And that could range from topics like we've already talked about with cybersecurity and emerging technologies, but it's also about accessing government services. And what we also hear about is prevalent healthcare issues that occur in communities. And so these are things like diabetes education and rheumatic heart disease education, and some of the risk factors, and providing different content that can support that. And so we've now got a program, and and we're working with a federal contract with the Department of Social Services. That means we've deployed seven or eight kiosks at the moment, and in the next couple of weeks we've got another 30 to deploy across 31 communities in the NT, and so far it's going very well. And part of what happens with those kiosks is we also get all of the telemetry of what's happening in the kiosk, as well as the usage data, so we can see how each of the communities what content they're accessing, what's important to them, and we can then start to evolve and develop more content that's going to be relevant for each of those communities. And as part of that, we've got a mentoring program that's going on with community members, so that we can then start to prioritise and build those digital teams effectively out in community, who can then become self-managing, because ultimately in the end we want them to be able to take control of the kiosk and manage it. So
seems like a great partnership of your two great passions that you've brought together for the benefit of community, which is awesome. For those people who maybe were interested in being involved, tell us a little bit about, you talked about some pathways for people to get involved in the technology side of some of the kiosks. How do people, on both fronts, let's maybe answer the question for both businesses. If someone out there either wants to be looking for a tech provider, how do they get in touch with Utilitise? If they want to work with a leading technology firm, how do they get in touch with you? And with Land on Heart, if someone wants to be involved, wants you in the community, or wants to be involved with the technology, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the easiest ways, we've got our websites. So there's utilitiseit.com.au, And certainly there's a contact us there. Personally, anyone can contact me on LinkedIn. I've got a LinkedIn profile and happy to communicate in that way. Landonheart.com is our Land on Heart website. So they're probably the primary mechanisms. And we've also got our phone number that people can reach us on. I don't know if you want me to share that.
Yeah, you can go for it. Yeah, do it.
So that's 03 5292 8500. And that'll come through to our reception, and you can be put through to me, and we can have a conversation.
Brilliant. Well, Steve, thanks for the conversation today. I know we've covered in short time a bunch of topics. Love to have you back on for a round 2, maybe a round 3 in the future. Hear how Land on Heart is tracking, and obviously seeing how Utilitise continues to grow from strength to strength in Geelong and beyond. So thank you so much for the last sort of 12, 18 months of your support of our clients and our business. And I look forward to catching up with you again in the near future.
No worries. Thanks you. Mate. And thanks for having me.
Cheers.
All right.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britton FP, or Google Burke Britton Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to, don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britton Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.